Okay, so I'm sitting here at my PC and I'm writing, okay? So I have, like you can't see it. I have book two, the current version of book two, all pulled up. And I just formatted it to make sure it was the right, 6 by 9, the right gutter size, the right margins and everything, which is 0.83, 0.83, 0.83, 0.65 with a first line point 0.2 space and single space line justified. So as I have it set, it's at just under 14,000 words and 32 pages. It's a size 10.5 font and Franklin Gothic book font. Okay? So, with all that information, I have 32 pages that I have written quite a while ago. I wrote this before I got I had the plot in place, but obviously the setup I've basically had the last third of the book pretty much entirely solidified. Like I know exactly where I was going for the end, but it's all the steps getting there, right? So apologize for the fan in the background if you can hear that, by the way. But so I had I knew the events I wanted to hit to get to the last third of the book, and I knew generally what was going to be happening. But obviously, every detail, every scene was needing to be worked on as you go along. That's how it goes. So I have the first 32 pages here, and generally it's sticking to the guidelines of what I finished writing because I think I'm pretty much done, like 95% done with the outline for book two. I have the story in place, at least scene by scene, event by event. I don't have like all the dialogue written, which is the hard part, trying to figure out natural flowing dialogue, especially with expository scenes, and make it seem natural and not, just vomiting dialogue. Uh, so I have that done, and the outline itself is 11 pages, which I think is pretty good because that's a lot to use. That's a lot to work off of. Um, but what I have here, I'm reading through right now, and I'm still on the boundary. I'm not sure how I should write it in the sense of perspective. I'm because the first book, Vengeance, Children of Faust, book one, was written from the direct perspective in a just past tense of the main character Kim. It was written from her perspective. Every word that described her was written with I, me, my, okay? Her perspective. However, all the Origins books were written in a narrative perspective. He, she, they, okay? Alex did this. Lucy did this. Even though Alex or Lucy are the main characters of the specific book, it was written as their name as the pronoun, I guess, as the noun. So I'm trying to figure out how do I don't know how I should write book two because book two doesn't follow the perspective of Kim. It follows somebody else. It follows a separate main character's perspective, and I don't know if I want to write it as that character's perspective, which I have written right here. In the first 32 pages, I wrote it as a shifted perspective. Take from Kim, and you go to this character now as their perspective. But I don't know if I want to keep it as I, me, my, or if I want to switch it to the character's name as a narrative perspective. Because while we're going to be following along the characters in the same vein as the Origins miniseries, where we're following in a narrative perspective, but from the timeline and basically it's like a third. It's almost like third person in a way. Like you're following this one character, but you're describing them as their own person, not as an internal entity. So I don't know if I want to describe and to narrate and to write this book from this character's perspective or from a narrative standpoint. I don't know because we're gonna be sticking with him the whole time. With them, I didn't say him. With them. But at the same time, I want to have narrative freedom in how to draw a perspective. And if I'm sticking to this person's point of view and only what they can see and what they can understand, you miss out on stuff that happens when they're, say, unconscious or not a direct part of the action. For those kind of scenes, I have always done, in a way, a sort of lifted camera angle. Like, I'll be following along this person's perspective, but then when something else is happening and nearby to them, I will sort of shift the camera to that focus while still being from that person's perspective but from a little bit more of a loose narrative standpoint of describing what's happening. So you see the pickle I'm in. Like, say there's a fight scene happening that doesn't include the main character who you're speaking through. I then have to break that narrative standpoint and either find a way to write that fight scene from my perspective as the main character, or to break away from the main character and then just to narrate the fight scene as it happens, and then cut back to the main character on occasion, kind of thing, to show for their responses. That's kind of where I'm at, so I don't really know if I should just rewrite what I have here to a narrative perspective, or if I should just write the whole thing from a first person perspective. I don't know. Either way, I'm going to figure that out within the next 10 minutes, I'm sure. But here's also the problem that I'm working with, which is what I have here for the first 32 pages written out is a good basis, but there's a lot of sequential stuff that I have altered and kind of shuffled a little bit. So I have to basically stitch together and reorganize what I have written while using what I have written as a basis for what I will write. So, like, it starts out with a dream sequence. You know, that's like almost an immediate gut puncher, and that kind of cements you into the events of the last book a little bit, kind of reminds you of what's going on, and then it jumps into the cold, harsh reality of the current timeline. And from there, there's like a hospital scene, and in the hospital scene, I have to push back the day, because before I was going to go to a hospital scene directly the next day to a different scene, but now I'm going to push that second scene back to the third scene and have a second day at the hospital with a different character interaction to help build what else is going on and to set up other things. And then we go to the third scene, and then the third scene transitions to the fourth scene, which is the big plot point, and then from there you have kind of a little like permeating middle ground until the plot kicks off. So that's kind of the sequence of events that I have right now. I'm afraid of that being a little too long, but I don't think it will be, considering the emotional impact of these first few scenes. So, also, dude, I need to shave. Should I shave? Should I just leave it? I might just trim it and leave it. I don't know. I don't think I have ADD. I might have ADD. Somebody help me. Somebody help my brain work right. That'd be awesome. Anyway, what do you think, fan? Yeah, me too. Sadness. So, I don't know. It's really annoying, and I'm gonna keep pushing it off, you know? Every time I'm like, I'm gonna start book 2. But what if I fine-tune this over here? I always do that. I'm kind of afraid to write book 2, because there's so much weight on book 2. But I know that since I have this outline done, I'm gonna be able to pretty much, I wouldn't say fly through it, but I'm gonna be able to get the rough draft of book 2 fucking easy. But I'm holding myself to such a high standard that when I reach a certain page number, you know, I'm going to be like, it needs to be longer. I don't know if I'm going to be satisfied with it. It's going to be a long book. I know it's going to be like 300 pages. I'm sure it's going to be 300 pages. But in my brain, I'm going to want to stretch scenes out more. I'm going to want to over-divulge. I'm just going to constantly be triple thinking things that only need to be thought once or twice. You know, I'm just going to be overthinking what's expected from you as a reader and what's expected from me as the writer. I'm also afraid that once I finish book 2 and I'm done with the series at some point, not saying book 2 is the end of it, but I'm saying once I'm done with the series, I'm afraid of, like, in a way, I almost lose my identity, because that's just what I do. I write, you know? I don't know. It's all just so nerve-wracking, but I want to get it done before I die. Oh, I want one respawn, please, so if I die on accident, I can, like, respawn and keep going. Anyways, that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. Also, airsoft stuff. I'm going to be changing the upper rail, the rail system in the outer barrel for my CM16, and finally finishing that gun's build. I even might replace the body with a metal body, but that might make it kind of too heavy. I don't know. The CM16's body is made of polymer, but it kind of flexes with the gears inside. It's kind of scary. Anyway, yeah, that's what I'm doing.